Orgasmic enlightenment, where the sexual and spiritual come together. I'm Kim Anami, and I'm a holistic sex and relationship coach and a vaginal weightlifter. In this show, we explore all things intimate. I believe that our sexual energy is life force, creative energy, and we can use it to shape our worlds, strengthen our relationships, and self-actualize. I blend the most avant-garde information from neuroscience, ancient sexual practices like Tantra and Taoism, to renegade wellness modalities to show you how to create gourmet sex in your lives. Come one, come all. My vagina heals everything. Over the past month, I've done a couple of episodes highlighting the, at best, clumsy and at worst, damaging way that allopathic medicine does not heal reproductive issues, or maybe anything. My own journey into the realm of self-healing and natural approaches came out of growing up in a household that definitely bought into the mainstream medical narrative. Doctors were demigods, and we guzzled antibiotics and took drugstore chemical potions every time we had a runny nose. If there ever was a health issue we had questions about, I have memories of going to the almighty doctor, telling them about it, and having the very clear sense that they just didn't have a clue. They didn't know what this thing was, they didn't know where it came from, and they certainly had no idea how to heal it. In my late teens, when I began exploring alternative health and wellness and studied everything from meditation to herbs to homeopathy to transpersonal psychology, I was fascinated and empowered by the idea that I could heal myself. I learned that pretty much all pharmaceutical, quote, medicine comes from plants anyway and is based on the chemical composition of them. By creating a synthetic pharmaceutical equivalent that could be patented, since plants cannot be, that's how these companies made money. But the problem with synthetic drugs is that all the side effects that comes with them that plants do not have. So I very eagerly studied and learned how to make herbal and homeopathic first aid kits, and that became the medicine cabinet that exists in my life and family to this day. I don't even have things like Tylenol in the house. And then I discovered sexual medicine. In my late teens, I fell in love for the first time and experienced epic, transformational, alchemical sex with my partner. Anami sex, the kind of sex that changes your life. In fact, this was the actual sex that sparked the path I'm on now and the reason we're all here on this podcast and in Anami Land today. At the time, I had addiction issues. Our sex and love life healed them. He had addiction issues. Our sex and love life healed them. After we went away for my very first ever sex weekend, holed up in my family's summer cabin for 3 days in the winter, this involved sex all day and all night with intervals of deep, intimate talking and the occasional food fueling session. And when I came back to the city on Monday, I felt reborn. I remember going back to work at the job that I had, and men were flocking to me like moths to a flame. They were finding excuses to talk to me, to just linger around me and be near my well-fucked aura. And I was flowy and light and graceful and filled with so much beauty and well-fucked adoration. For me, for him, for life. And I realized that this energy was the Rosetta Stone. It trumped everything else. Out of that energy, our lives and selves changed wildly. I still use herbal and homeopathic medicine, but I'm an even bigger proponent of sexual medicine, for its all-around curative, restorative, and alchemical power to change, up-level, and rebirth. One of the main messages I aim to convey in my work is that you have the power to heal yourself. Your vagina, your cock, your procreative sexual energy, and your orgasms are the key to shaping your world, including your emotional and physical body and self. Most people are so dissociated from this energy that they never get to this place. They have no idea that their sexual power can do this. And so instead, this energy inverts on them to where they become a victim of it or are terrified of its power, and so they distance themselves from it. In Anami Land, we are all about consciously using this energy to grow and heal and create our lives. The well-fucked all-stars that I've interviewed over the years are here to show you just how they've taken this idea and applied it. Not only do they heal their reproductive issues, everything from PMS to ovarian cysts in women, erectile dysfunction in men, weight loss in both sexes, but they find that they can work through much deeper psychological and spiritual themes ranging from sexual abuse to depression. Your sexual energy and sexual self become the way and the truth. And ironically, they are the things most hidden, deliberately shielded by a symbolic fig leaf that you aren't meant to peek behind in Christian mythology and so many other manufactured religious and social taboos. And this is exactly where you will find your most power. In today's episode, we are speaking with Jenna. She is an alumni of my Vaginal Kung Fu Salon and has had some epic experiences with her psychedelic oracle Vagina that has been the pathway for her most profound healing, insights, transformation, and of course, life-changing orgasms. Well fucked all-stars! Hello, Jenna.
Hello, Kim.
It's great to have you.
The pleasure is all mine.
Well, let's get into it. So you have so many epic stories of healing taking place via your Yoni. So tell us about your journey, where you started, and some of the epic transformations you've had along the way.
I'm just so thrilled to be here. Thank you for taking the time to hear my story. I do want to start with communicating the beauty that has unfolded and the amount of importance that I think this work is. Like was beyond the most incredible experience I have ever had. And although it was a roller coaster ride for sure. I am the woman that I've always envisioned myself of being in the most beautiful, beautiful way. And I know that it's kind of like the Anami Land of like there's always another level. And I never expected to understand another level, right? I always thought like this was it, and perhaps this was the pinnacle. Um, I I guess the best way to go about it is kind of I'm really blessed in the fact that I didn't really have any serious sexual trauma or assault in my life. And what I recognized, because like I was worried, like, do I feel like I need to kind of have this like crazy experience in life to be validated enough, to have been here and to have my work or the work that I've put in appreciated and seen. But I just want to vouch for a lot of the women that are out there really unsure, there are so many minute details that are happening in society on what it is to be a woman. And my story, I think, kind of like really speaks to that. So when I started like growing into a woman, I was never really supported. I was terrified when puberty began. I was a little earlier to develop, and I just remember completely attacking my body. And how could this happen to me? Why is this happening to me? My life is over. And
Oh
it
my,
was entering,
so
yeah,
this is just experiencing some, I'm guessing, like puberty signs, like breast developing, body changing,
yeah.
and a sense that you are transforming from child into woman, and then having some kind of wall that you're hitting, perhaps even anxiety or fear because of whatever modeling you've had through society or not had through your own mother or family or surrounding, women role models. So you're having this really strong aversion, concern about this new stage of your life.
Yeah, it was complete resistance. And like so much so, like I remember, and this is like a crazy share, but I was like, it's nuts. Like I would actually pluck my pubic hair as a way to prevent myself from stepping into
Wow.
what I knew was coming was what was my menarche, which is, the first day that you start your period. And even I had like growing up, I had a floor to ceiling mirror in my closet. And I spent a lot of time in that closet growing and being scared and looking at myself and talking to myself. And I remember I had like this day of negotiation for the first day that I had to convince myself that it was time to wear a sports bra. So we're talking like a deep level of shame and resistance and hatred towards opening and blossoming to become a woman, which today I obviously think is one of the most beautiful, epic, beings on this earth. So
And
it what
I just want to say, like, I think that you're right in terms of your teenage self or prepubescent self recognizing that there is this now very complex web of dichotomies and challenges in the realm of being a woman, and that most women struggle with and have never really resolved, right? And to perceive that as a young person and be concerned about stepping forward. And especially in that we do not, as a society, in very few places on the planet anymore have any kind of ritual or embarking or welcoming or the idea, even acknowledging that we're entering into this new realm or any level of support or education for that.
yeah, role models, education. I mean, it's all just drenched in inconvenience and embarrassment and
Fear, you know,
fear, slut
rape,
shaming.
like slut.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
asked for it, you wore a mini skirt, you got
yeah.
raped, you had it coming, like, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the level of resentment that I started to build against men, and here I was literally like stuffing everything that was coming at me in a closet, at least trying to, like a big heavy door, right? And you can't really stop it, but resenting men, like so what was I just trying to be a man essentially, you know? And so not having the impact of a role model to guide me and support me in celebration of growing and of changing, which is so incredibly beautiful because like you're on the precipice of accessing so much wisdom and so much intuition and so much understanding of the dynamics of life and the dynamics of our spiritual body and what we can invite in our life. And yeah, so eventually when I ended up starting my period, I hid it from my family for as long as I could, close to a year,
Wow.
where I did not tell anybody. I didn't want anybody to know. And it was just this really rotten experience of my life is essentially over, right? And so, there's a lot of different things that have happened along the way. And as I became a teenager, and of course, I started obviously later talking to my friends about it. And one thing I will state, I was actually thinking about this woman I had a conversation with about a year ago, and I was living in North Carolina up until recently. And she told me that when she started her period, she didn't even tell her mom. She ended up having to get a job and she would pretend she was going to go to the movies to go with friends just so her mom could drop her off at the movie theater so she could walk to the grocery store next door to get tampons and pads.
Wow.
That's how disconnected, and that's kind of like the basis of like what is so sad about really like here I am terrified looking at my pubes and now I'm having like multi-orgasm cervical orgasms, right? So it's like this crazy experience. But so as time went on and I along the way I also had chronic asthma and I lived pretty much on an inhaler at night. And so in 2019, I had a couple of experiences with a terrible asthma doctor, and I walked out and said, you know what? Like, fuck this. Like, I'm going to heal this and I'm going to heal this on my own. And I did. So in 2020, I ended up going down a really big healing journey. And I worked with a beautiful Chinese medicine doctor named Ron. And it was the first time that I had anyone put their hand on my shoulder and look at me and tell me, like, nothing's wrong with you and you are going to be able to breathe again. And we're going to get to the bottom of all this sadness, which is what not being able, that's the
Grief,
energy of the
lungs.
lungs, grief.
Yeah.
Exactly. So if I could think back, like all that grief that I was experiencing coming into womanhood, it was almost like this energy that I was bringing with me. I was trying to stay small. So I was suffocating that deep feminine goddess that I know like was there, but I had yet to really meet her. Part of my healing journey was to obviously clean diet, which no doctor ever said anything about, and right, which was absolute crap. And what is the emotional dander? What's going on, and how is this preventing you from being able to essentially breathe and accepting your body? So one day, I don't really know what happened. I was on actually on birth control. So when I was for about 11 years. And one day while taking about I was about to pop the pill out of, like the foil bullshit. And I looked down and I was like, why am I doing this? Like nobody told me. I didn't know much about, it being a carcinogenic. I didn't know about the hormone disruption and like
They don't tell you
cancer.
that part. It's so fun.
No.
Given that it's a group 1 carcinogen, I don't understand how doctors still prescribe. It's like doctors prescribing cigarettes, which they used to do. They used to recommend cigarettes, right, back in the day. And now they still recommend the pill, except that the information about it being a carcinogen is been widely known for decades.
It,
And they still recommend it. It's bizarre. I don't know
it's
how,
it's nowhere, like nowhere to be seen. And almost like when you go to Europe and you buy cigarettes, like death, they'll have like someone with, a hole in their throat, like showing some depiction of what, can happen if you pick up cigarettes. So
Well,
there's
to
nothing
to
really.
be clear, it's a group 1 carcinogen according to the WHO. It's not just some internet rumor. The WHO has classified it that for, I don't know, at least like a couple of decades. And then I guess if you were ever to read the insert, in the prescription pill, I'm sure that a lot of this information would be in there. But it's very much out there and in alignment with allopathic, deity type sources, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So why am I taking this? I don't want to take it anymore. And I started to notice my body to shift and to change. My dreams got really vivid. And yeah, it was like there was this deep intuition started to come through. And then part of my journal routine in the morning, I had these 4 questions. And all of a sudden I was like, okay, I've never wanted to have children. Why? Like, why have I not looked into why I've never been interested in kids? Why do I hate my period? Like, why do I still hide my tampons from my husband? Why do I feel this absolute dread? Like, how many hours of my life had I spent like in misery because of this? And I started talking to a my healer, and I had another confidant, and they both were like, have you ever started to yoni gaze? Have you ever like looked at your yoni? What is your experience with really starting to see and accept this part of yourself? And I was like, oh, there's absolutely no way I can do that. That just sounds too scary. But I started to envision this woman. This woman started to appear in my consciousness, and she looked like this Grecian goddess, and she was bleeding all down her legs. And she had an open chest, and she was holding onto a baby, and she was unapologetic and owning everything that she is and that she offers to the world, and her ability to create, which was just so beautiful to. I mean, I can still see her now as I think about her, and I remember thinking, I have to be her. Like I want to be that. And she kind of held the picture up high for me and how far I knew that I needed to go in this journey. So, long story short, I ended up taking and learning how to make all my own beauty products like perfume. Because, when you're healing asthma, you have to get rid of all of the stuff in the kitchen, you have to get all the laundry detergents, and you have to completely change your lifestyle. So I learned how to make all this different potions and laundry detergents and cleaners. And eventually started to want to build a deeper relationship with my sexuality. Okay, so here I am learning to accept myself, finally yoni gazing, noticing these subtle shifts. Like I remember I yoni gazed for about like 5 minutes. And I ended up going to Virginia Beach to go visit a friend. And I went to this party. And for some reason, I was just attracting every man at the party. I had no idea like what was happening, where these guys were coming from, how I was attracting them. But like it was just and I've never been somebody who men are excited about. Well, maybe they're not excited, but like I've just never really attracted men at all. Like I've always been the funny girl in the corner, minding my own business. And I was like, there's something here. And I started talking to women. I was like, I yoni gaze for the first time. Have you ever done this? Like, what is your experience with your vagina? Like, are you giving your body away? Like, what about your period and how does that feel? And so these conversations I started to have opened all these doors and all these experiences that I started to see around me and the head tilts and are you crazy? And, because most people are like, are you crazy? You're looking at your vagina. I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at my vagina and it is helping me. And I'm slowly starting to be able to breathe again.
And you said
So,
as well that you also had an aversion to putting your fingers inside your vagina,
oh
right?
yeah.
So was your yoni gazing pre that? Like, did that then lead to? I mean, I might be jumping ahead here, but I just want to clarify. Like, at this time when you were yoni gazing, and this is part of the start of your journey, did you still have this feeling like you couldn't put anything inside your own vagina or your own
Yeah.
fingers? Yeah.
Yeah. There is something about touching, like I could touch my vulva all day and, self-pleasure with a vibrator and only get the superficial clitoral orgasms, which was kind of like wild to me when I started the program, the salon, was like, I can't believe I've never given myself a G-spot orgasm. Like this is absolutely wild that I've only gone this far. And so, yeah, thinking about inserting a finger inside of me was just the visceral reaction. It was just whoa, like not happening. You're not doing that, and maybe you're gonna have to like. And I think probably that's why I ended up taking the course is because I was like, I need to be able to finger myself. I need to be able to be comfortable knowing the ins and outs of myself because if I'm taking on the full ownership of my body, if I am going to heal, if I am going to really be that woman that I have that picture of, that Grecian goddess, I need to be able to know everything and stop outsourcing my body, my health, my happiness, because, I would even outsource my happiness to external factors constantly. So how could I fall in love with myself when self-love was deeply, deeply missing from my life and from my experience? And I avoided mirrors all my life. I've never felt beautiful. And more of the growing up, the chubby girl with a double chin, who had the great personality, but I never felt like a beautiful woman whatsoever. So I knew that that needed to change. And when I first started the program, I remember I was telling a friend, and there's not that many people you can like share these stories with because
So
not
how did you?
many people get it.
Let's just back up for a sec. So, um, how did you find my work in the midst of this? So you're doing yoni gazing, and I actually would love to hear a little more about that because you talked about having some psychedelic experiences
Yeah,
when you
that's
were yoni
coming.
gazing. Oh, that's coming. Okay,
Yeah.
so and then how did you find my work?
So it was pretty soon after I had Yoni gazed, and a friend was like, check this girl out on Instagram. And the first thing she sent me, or the first thing that I saw was like orgasmic births. And I was like, this bitch is fucking crazy.
Was that a good
What is the
crazy
no,
or a
but
not
I had
or a
it
skeptical
was
crazy?
Kim, it's so off menu. And for someone who had never heard about that. And I'm very open, right? Like I'll hear something and like, as much as like I have to register in my nervous system like information and then I can start to integrate it. But I remember at first just being like, what is she talking about? Because remember, I did not want to have children. I was terrified of being pregnant. I'm terrified of for something about it brought about a lot of shame.
Oh, well, all of that. I mean, well, the way you describe your initial feelings about your menstruation. It would lead, I mean, even bigger than that is birth and motherhood and then everything surrounding that. So that's not surprising.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it happens like a couple times. It didn't become a practice like it does today. Like today it's like on another level. And so a friend was like, check this woman out. And then I started, following you. And it was back when I think you were still doing retreats. And I've always kind of just like kept you like there. And as I've been evolving and growing, who I am and what I do, I began to listen more to your work because it started to resonate a lot more. So earlier this year, I don't remember what happened. I was in North Carolina and I was really alone. My husband travels a lot for work. This is me putting me there in January. I had no friends. I'm a very highly spiritual, conscious woman. And so being in this really small town in North Carolina, I'm not bashing it. I love it. It's so beautiful. But I couldn't find any deep connection. I couldn't find anyone to have these types of conversations with. I couldn't talk to anyone about my pussy. I couldn't talk to anyone about any revelations or crazy dreams that I was having or just like diving into depth because I love to live in the deep end. And I was like, this is the time because I want to continue to delve into my pussy, and there's so much beauty that has already come. Like, what do you have to lose at this point? So within the like first couple of days, I remember I was telling a friend, I was like, I feel like I have been given these divine keys to my consciousness. Like all of a sudden, and I had a great childhood. Okay. It really was good, but I couldn't remember it. Like I don't have like these crazy memories of all these things. And so I would be like driving in the car or like going with my husband to like pick up tacos or something. And all of a sudden, like, and this is within the first week, these memories would just like pop up. And then I would think about a person, then I would think about a memory in childhood. So it was like this whole map I had opened this reservoir of information that it was almost like the universe was like, all right, you're here, here's the key, open yourself and let's get to work essentially. So the first day that I Yoni gazed, I put on this really beautiful low cut long sleeve dress, and I wore dresses the entire time of the salon. Absolutely loved it. And I you were in the meditation, the visualization, you said, soften your eyes and just keep saying, I love you. I love you. I love you. And I noticed my body start to feel a little woozy. And then it was almost like, the contrast of when heat hits cold, almost like a mirage, like the way that there's texture in space. I started to see this really beautiful like texture start to form all around my vulva. And I was like, wow, okay, this is really strange. Like, what's happening? Stay with it, like you would kind of with anything. And all of a sudden, as I was staring at my vagina opening, which was like my vagina opening was holding all the information. It was holding all the trauma. It was holding, which is why I was so deeply afraid of putting my finger into it. It's almost like you're walking up the stairway to heaven, and all of a sudden there's a goblin at the gate and trying to protect you from like getting in. And that's what I feel. And because it's interesting because we'll get into what my vagina opening ended up revealing to me later. And I was just staring at the tissue, and all of a sudden it was like this portal just opened. And I lived in Sedona for a little while. Like I love 1111. I love all these portals, and everyone gets all fucking excited about this portal and that portal. But I don't think I ever really truly understood a portal. Like I don't think I'd ever like really registered and seen the magnitude of a portal. And this portal opened, and it just like sucked me in, and I saw rape and famine and war and pain. And I saw the deep divine feminine, or rather the feminine collective pain of what we've gone through. And I don't like to come from a place of like, oh, where I'm victim, because like I'll never play that card. But there's still this element to witnessing and observing some of the stuff that I had experienced and some of the stuff that other women have experienced. And all of a sudden I just like stopped and was like still kind of in this warpy phase, this warpy state of what is the one thing, the most important sought after thing in the universe? It's my yoni. Like, what of anything that is like that is here in this moment in life, if we have all these wars and like men move mountains and there's all these beautiful crazy romance stories of women just being beautiful and amazing and drawing them in, and then life and death and everything that you can imagine within this picture, I was just like, I am what every single entity desires. And it was almost like I had this really beautiful connection and I felt God for the first time. It was like, I was like, wow, it was almost like in the Matrix. I could see like all these things. And I was like, I am this direct link to God. And that is right here with me. And that is right in between my legs. And it was the most spiritual experience I had ever had. There, to all of a sudden sit there and be like, wow, my pussy is the most important thing. And there's nothing better than this. And then I am the direct link to God and it's right here. But then, like, holy shit. Okay. So, like, all this control. So, what happens if we can control the womb? What happens when we can control the yoni? What else can you control? Can you control humanity? Can you control the way that we evolve as people? How deep does this rabbit hole go? And it just started to really make a lot of sense as to how much work had been put in to limit women and to make them feel this shameful. Because if you can make a woman terrified of connecting to her period, her bleed, and to anything that has to do with her being a woman, then I can't imagine what other type of ties that you can do to limit people. You can limit, right? So it was just this like really wild experience. And I don't think that there was anything as important to looking at myself in the mirror in this beautiful dress and thinking, wow, I am the direct link to God and my pussy is the most sought after thing in the world.
Amazing.
So
So you have this realization, and then, yeah, what's happened post that?
yes. So we had a call with you one night, and I think it was the first call, and you said something about if your partner is not galloping with you and saying fuck yes to everything, then what are you doing? And it was so raw and so real, and my heart started to sink because I knew kind of at that moment that the marriage that I was in, that if I were to invite Eric on this journey with me, that he wouldn't join me on the sexcapades of really understanding our sexuality and growing as deeply as I would have really preferred. And I got off that call just like really, really upset and thinking, okay, well, how do I figure this out? You know how you always you say like a woman is always testing whether or not she's safe in a relationship, right? And so like this was one of those like safety pieces where I knew that I needed to form some like a test. And I know that kind of sounds pretty awful, but I ended up telling my husband, I said, look, I got you a surprise and I'm gonna get you Sexual Mastery for Men with Kim Anami. And I want you to join me on this beautiful journey so that we can tap into this reservoir of deep love and co-creation and really step up our sex game. And it wasn't received in the way that I had hoped. And it ended up becoming like a couple of days of conversation back and forth to where, he was feeling pushed to do something that he wanted to be able to do in his own time, and totally right. Like we're all in divine timing. We're all doing everything the best way that we can, and like when we know we can and when we feel we can. So I ended up having to put that on the back burner. And so like the remainder of everything else that we learned, I ended up doing everything on my own. So I didn't really have sex dates, or like I would schedule them and then we would have a sex date, but Eric never invited me. He was never the one in charge. He never like I was starting to feel like the man essentially, because I was the one that was always reaching him and trying to have sex. I never felt really pursued. And I ended up putting him and that whole thing on the back burner because I know it was like kind of important. Well, okay, well, if they're not ready, then you just keep going. Like just keep going and keep riding that horse alone. And I did. And it just became this like every day of meeting myself and connecting with my yoni and breathing and staying so deeply connected to all these memories and all these amazing things that started to unfold. I mean, finally, I think it was a little delayed, but I finally got Siva in the mail, and I was like, oh my God, like I'm so excited. The dildo, your dildo, you're the Siva dildo. And it was Christmas, and I remember seeing it and being like, "Wow, like this is about to go down, and this is about to be really beautiful." And it took a little while for me to finally get to the space of cervical orgasm, but when I finally got there, it it was like multiple, 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 multiple. And then after I got up and I was like, wow, I feel more like me. I feel more unapologetic. And I'm really excited about like who I am and like who I can share my life with. And like, how can I continue to be me and authentic and start talking about this a little bit more? And so um, it was the way that I started stepping up in work, the way that I started to change in like how I was looking at myself in the mirror just became such this experience of like self-discovery and self-love. I never danced alone. I hated to dance by myself. And then eventually I ended up like that's all I did. I would be in my panties, running around the house, dancing all day, every day, and just exploring these new spaces and this work that I had been doing. When I would use the egg, I noticed that every time I would work with my vagina opening, that I would unlock a memory, like something would shift, something would open. And I had already had this doctor shame. I had already kind of still was dealing with a little bit of healing from that and from really accepting my bleed and taking my time for the first couple of days of my period and learning everything was just so incredibly beautiful and empowering. And so that day, I had specifically worked a lot longer on my vagina opening and had done a really big release and laying in bed. And all of a sudden, I got these pictures of my pediatrician. And I was just like, why am I seeing this guy? And then all of a sudden, I remember I was about 2 or 3 years old. I remember him pulling my panties down and laying me down on the table or on the whatever bench that you with all the paper on it and pulling my labia apart to make sure that everything was okay. And I was just like, okay, am I forcing this memory? Like what is this? What is happening? So the first thing as I do, I send a message to my sisters, and my sisters have 2 kids each. And I'm like, hey guys, what do you remember about Dr. Signs? Like, what do you remember about going to our pediatrician? They're like, what are you doing thinking about Dr. Signs? I was like, don't ask. It's not an easy question to answer, but what do you remember? Oh, you just remember running away from the vaccines and like hating all that. And then, yeah, that's it. Why? Why? What's up? I was like, do you remember him taking your panties off and looking at you? And they were just like, no, I don't, like, not at all. And I was like, okay, well, like, what was that? And they're like, but we take our kids to do that, and doctors check on our children whether their genitals are growing all right all the time. And I was like, what? Like, what? You have a vagina, you have a vulva,
Yeah.
you clearly have a penis you've had sex with. Like what, like how deep is this going to where, and then I looked online and then I got on the Google machine and it was like, okay, do doctors take down or pediatricians take down kids' pants, and are they staring at their genitals? And it's like, yes, like it's a practice, and everyone's doing it, and you can totally opt out if you want to. And then I'll talk to other people about it and be like, oh yeah, the doctor's done that too. Cindy or Samantha or Timothy or whatever. And I'm like, am I crazy for having this wild like experience to thinking we are literally giving our children away to strangers so their pants can be pulled down and looked at. This was an old pediatrician. This was an old man with a beard. And I'm like a 2 to 3 year old Jenna. And then, look, granted, like I don't have any kind of crazy trauma. Like I don't have like anything. And I'm not mad at my mother about it. I called her and had her validate the experience. It's
Well,
like, I'm not mad at you.
okay, but if you were to just extrapolate the fact that this person's called a doctor and like your mom took you over to this old man's house who pulled your pants down and stared at your genitals, would we accept that? Like it's only because, people have been so conditioned to think that doctors have some kind of godlike power that we should give them the rights to our bodies, right? We're conditioned exactly like from birth, from early infanthood to believe and have this imprinted upon us, right? To give this power away. But yeah, I mean, you wouldn't consider that to be normal behavior if like we'd consider that serious like child molestation.
Yeah. Like we've been conditioned to endure unwanted touch
Yeah.
all of our life.
Yeah.
Like all the unwanted touch, all the, oh, go kiss your auntie or
Yeah.
your uncle and say hi to them, or, being tickled against our will and forced to eat our food and just constantly told to have all these unpleasant body sensations that's taking us out of being fully embodied and understanding our limits and what are our boundaries. And oh no, it's totally okay. So like later, how is that going to allow me or teach me to know how to say no? Like it doesn't really give us any room to understand pleasure, to understand what we want. And for women mostly, I think we do a lot of performance and we do everything to, please anyone else. I mean, like I totally understand why it comes from a loving place, but it doesn't come from a self-love space, which was so important for me to understand. And it was that moment that I knew I was like, okay, this is so deep, and this doctor thing runs so into this conditioning of it's okay to just take your pants down. Doctors are just like stuffing their hands down your pants, and it's totally fine.
So I'd love to hear more about your transformations. Like you talk about how like the shifts in your vagina. So you've gone from being a woman who, was afraid to put her fingers in her own vagina, and now you talk about being multi-orgasmic and having a very articulate vagina that can even play the flute. So
Yes.
let's hear more about that.
Yeah, so what I've been able to do is I started to be able to play with the egg a lot to where like I was able to move it vertical. No, I mean sorry, horizontal in my yoni. And so being able to feel the difference, because I remember when you first started with the control the right side and then isolate the left, or vice versa, it seemed very like almost nearly impossible. But the amount that I was able to pull the egg in and work with it and to isolate the movement, and then my vagina opening started to unlock. So like I don't even know what you would even call this, because I know that the urethral sponge, the G spot, is like really pretty. It could be pretty close depending on your, I guess, the architecture. And every time I would use it, I mean, I would unfold into at least like 20 back to back. I guess I would call them like vaginal orgasms. So they were just this like constant rhythm of this awakening, and the amount that I was able and that I am able to use the egg and to pull it all the way inside to articulate every angle of the cervix. I was just became this really interesting level. And then when I started using Siva, I would be able to feel all these different ways, and I would just play with the articulation of trying from the top, from the side, from here, and the way that I'm able to suck and like bring the egg in or bring the dildo in. And then I started doing my masturbation or my self-pleasuring practices in front of the mirror, because I was like, I'm starting to feel really beautiful finally. And I've avoided the mirror my entire life. So I now I have a floor to ceiling mirror. I will self-pleasure in front of the mirror because I want to know what it is like for a man to be able to have sex with this goddess, with this woman who has put so much work and effort into her body and all this self-love. So even just by the way, watching myself oscillate and watching my body move in the way that I feel so empowered, and to witness myself in pleasure, and to finally actually, I guess, even hold space for this beautiful woman that I've become, that I am so excited to continue to grow. And so, all of the practices that I've picked up, the different ways, all the, cervical orgasms that I just find to be absolutely incredible for all reasons of, wiping out everything that I could ever imagined. I mean, like I'm going through this experience of like being my best being my best fuck buddy, I didn't really have any, although I was, married, I didn't really have a partner to do this with. So I essentially just became like this single woman who was just discovering and pleasuring herself and having sex with herself and going through all the ins and outs of what that was like when you had a husband who was sitting on a couch just, a couple feet away from you. So it was still this kind of this beautiful experience, but it was also like very quiet. And I didn't feel like I could talk to him about all of the orgasmic, enlightening experiences and the sensations that I had in my body and what was starting to change. And it ultimately became a thing where I started to have honest conversations and said, I feel like I'm starting to push you to do something that you aren't really interested in. And this is not coming from a place of love. This is coming from me wanting and trying to change you into something that you're not. So from all these elements of who I'm growing into and this exploration of my yoni and feeling all this pleasure and starting to have that sense of like I deserve better. Like I know that I want someone to be able to ride this with me because I know that I deeply deserve it after all the work that I have done. And just to even know and to come home to myself for the first time, I want a deep, passionate, soulful, sexual relationship. And I had realized that my libido went completely down because I had to minimize my sexual self to meet another person like where he was at. So it was like all self-ownership too. Like, was my vagina dry? Well, my vagina was dry because like I had to lower my libido so I wouldn't get rejected every time I kept trying to have sex. So like it was a numb vagina, it was super dry, and it was age, right? Like I was a victim to age. I was a victim to, oh, okay, well, you just get older and that's what you do. And that's
So
what
that was
everyone
your
is telling you.
rationalization. It doesn't mean
Yeah,
that age was the cause. It became part
right.
of your rationalization where really
Exactly.
your vagina just wasn't happy in this particular partnership.
Exactly. And that's what I meant. That's what at the time I was convincing myself and, learning about lube and learning about the importance of like this becomes a perpetuating cycle. Like we all have the ability to lubricate. We just need to move this sexual energy and these sexual blocks in order for us to start to get more I guess what the more blood flow, right? And so I was the cause of not really having this beautiful enlightenment of sex because I had to minimize myself and my sexual self just to fit into this relationship that over time and after that one call I realized just like really wasn't supporting me because of anything that I would ever want to do. I would want to share this with my partner. I'd want to really dive into like making like Jen and Jeff and like making all this money and like having wild sexcapades and these dates. I wanted dates. Like I wanted breast orgasms. I wanted to squirt. I wanted to like just come all over the walls and to be with someone to hold me in that space. I wanted like period sex and I just get dirty and just to be primal and to also be in love and to be in this beautiful space of exploration that we've been shamed all of our lives that we can't do, we shouldn't do, it should look like this, it can't look like that. And I wanted to be free of it. And so the more
Awesome.
free,
Yeah, that's great.
yeah.
So tell me more. So you went from that place and into your own transformations that you said you actually lost some weight.
Yes. So I've been a yoga teacher for 10 years and I had stubborn lower fat in my lower belly, fat in my lower belly. And the practices in the morning and then using the egg and having that level of articulation of how my cervix could really pull the egg up and even Siva, like it could just really, it just this beautiful suction vacuum. Now I'm like, she's kind of hungry, right? But she over time, when I would, look in the mirror, I'd be like, she's starting to shed and she definitely got a lot more tone. And so this area that I had never really accessed just started to look a lot better and feel a lot better. I mean, if I can do something so, I mean, it's such deep inner work, right? Like, sure, I can do a crunch, but if you're not really accessing the your deeper organs and the deeper spaces of where your PC muscles, it's really not going to be that possible. And so I actually even had like a very low level of incontinence too. So like incontinence was something that I was slowly starting to have. It was only in the morning, and then again, and they're thinking, oh well, that's just what happens, right? You're getting older, and that's just like part of the rhetoric that gets force fed to us. And so that completely went away. I mean, within like 2 days. Like
Yeah.
that was like the easiest, one of the easiest thing to fix. But yeah, so it just started to take ownership for Jenna, you caused this. Like you're the reason why, you're dry. You're the reason why you're not feeling anything. You're the reason why your libido's down. You're the reason why, and you need to actually, if you're going to be doing this with your body, there's other accents of your life that you need to start taking ownership for too. And I took ownership for the fact that I knew that the relationship was, there was an incompatibility problem.
Yeah.
And as much as I deeply love my ex-husband and still do, I didn't want to force him to be something that he's not. And I wouldn't have come from a place of integrity at any capacity. And so finally, after, months of not having sex and months and months and months of conversation, I eventually said, look, I don't see this going anywhere in the next year or 2 years whatsoever. I think we need to call it what it is, because this is what I'm looking for. And I want you to be happy more than anything, but I'm not. And I know you're not either. So 2 days later, I packed my car up in North Carolina and moved back to Austin, and here I am.
Amazing. Very brave. So you had said that in the past you were kind of wallflower-ish and that you didn't really receive a lot of male attention. Have you seen that change now that you've really come into your own and you feel much more in ownership of yourself and your sexuality?
Yes, absolutely. The amount of incredible, beautiful men that I've been falling in, into my lap, and just the most incredible, beautiful, like synchronistic ways of friendship. What's so interesting is because although, I've left the marriage and I'm spending all this time getting to know myself and being single, because I haven't been single in like 20 years. And they've all come in these beautiful forms of friendship, of support, and who they are and what they're teaching me. So this level of masculine connection, and they're almost like my cheerleaders who really see who I am and they want me to be better. I mean, like they're all incredibly sovereign and healed and sexy and smart, and they have so much depth, and they deeply care for me, and we deeply all care for each other. But it's just interesting because I don't really have one here in Austin. They've just like happened to be, they're just like sprinkled all over the country. And it's really fun to have these different dynamics and these different perspectives. That's really helping me continue on this path that I'm on. That is pretty terrifying, but yeah, it's kind of wild to have a new form of feeling beautiful and knowing that like I do have what it takes, because I deeply, deeply believe that the love that I'm seeking is so close and so near me. And I'm just really looking forward to knowing that I have it in me to draw this type of man in, because the laughter, I mean, that song that I even played for you earlier is a really good friend of mine in Hawaii. And he was like, hey, let's get on a call and let's do something. So like these relationships are adding so much value. And I'm experiencing what it would be like to have a man that I'm calling through these really beautiful supportive friendships and these like soulful connections.
So you also had a transformation with other body parts like your breasts. What
Yeah.
happened there? You said you hated them.
Yeah, so I grew up with people joking that my breasts look like orangutan titties. And I know it was pretty harsh. And I didn't really have like that the my sisters, had reductions, they've had implants, they've also struggled. I was, little titty committee, and they had very large breasts. So there was this element of like, am I even feminine? And I guess maybe even going into, was I trying to kind of be a man by, you know, denying my feminine body and not, right? So I ended up not growing breasts like at all. And so I remember I remember I got a breast oil a couple of years ago. And one day I was like using it and I was like, wow, like I'm getting like really aroused by this. This is amazing. Maybe I should go masturbate. So like I would. So allowing that to come into the repertoire here, the way that my breasts have like completely filled out and opened and blossomed, and how much time and energy I put into loving myself, loving that part of myself, because luckily I was never one of those kids who ever tried to, stuff their bra or anything, but you, opening my body and understanding the beauty that my breasts also have to offer. I mean, I was so into trying to have breast orgasms, but it still hasn't actually been anything that I've like really tapped into yet that I would really like it to be. But yeah, I absolutely felt this really new sensation of feeling really feminine, this beauty of opening my heart and who am I going to be in the world and how am I going to showcase this new authentic voice that I started to open up to and accessing, right, to be able to stand so much. And so for me to be in ownership of my sexuality, so much so like I have no problem talking about it, right? I can still lift my chest and open myself to the world. I moved back from North Carolina, or to Austin in September, and I've gotten like on Instagram and for other work that I do, I've started to become a lot more like open about my sexuality and open about like what I know in this field and my story, and how can I share that with more people. How can I, because I remember like even seeing you, or seeing like different yoga teachers when I would take like a booty yoga class, and I would see women really embodying their sexual energy and up there and own it, and in their sacral and the way that they could move their hips. I always found that to be extremely inspiring, and I always wanted to be that. So the more that I'm talking and the more I'm diving into this, I'm realizing this is like kind of who I'm really am becoming, is someone to talk about a lot more about intimacy. What has helped me was being able to be so unapologetic and so open into my life, and so open into to this sexual woman that I am, that I really don't care. I mean, I've had phone calls where I'm like, I don't care what people think of me. I don't care if you don't like this. I don't care if I'm embarrassing you. I don't care if, this, you're having a hard time digesting what I'm saying. I'm saying this because this is coming from a deep rooted being. This is coming from a deep rooted sense of like who I am as a woman on this earth, and how do I want to share my mission? How much light can I spread to all of a sudden, maybe there's a woman who happens to see me and she's like, wow, I see that just like how I've seen you, or I've seen other women, kind of, spreading like a domino effect of more inspiration. Because when we are here and when we can love ourselves as much, and we can masturbate in front of the mirror, and then we can take these big leaps and leave, a very healthy, safe marriage.
So when your breasts, you said that you are quite dissociated from them. Do they actually fill out after
Yes.
you did
Yeah.
this?
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. They filled out like yeah, they filled out. They were even during pleasure, I did really enjoy and like how much that they didn't they would fill out, and how much like they have filled out over time. Yes, I would say that I have definitely grown at least a half of a cup, and they've lifted for sure. Yes.
Beautiful. I love that.
Yes.
Just feeling the note that you're connecting to them, and that actually manifests in a physical change.
Yes.
And then you also said that you healed abortion trauma through doing this work. And so, how would you describe that?
I had an abortion when I was 22. I'm 37. It was after that when I got on birth control. So when I saw the positive test, I remember thinking again to my body, like how I did early in puberty, is like, why are you doing this to me? So I became this victim to life, and to my body, and to what was happening, rather than being able to take the, accountability for what it was. And it was a very, very challenging time that I've had to like let go of, in terms of the different dynamics with my relationship and what was happening. And you started talking about the deep consequences. Like that's how powerful we are. We have this power to conceive. We have this incredible power to create life. And so the fact that this is just thrown out almost like an abortion these days is just like almost taking a tic tac, right? Like it's not even that
Yeah.
big of a deal. It just becomes like another option for people. It's like birth control, pull out method, condoms. I'll just get an abortion. Like that's not that big of a deal, right? And so that wasn't something that I had fully registered. And when I started going through all of the journaling entries that of everything that was in the program, I spent about a week like on my hands and knees crying and taking full accountability for the abortion that had happened. And I had reached out to my spiritual mentor and said, look, I'm really feeling really messy. I'm like opening up this door to all this trauma that I thought I had released whenever I was releasing my asthma, because I thought I had taken a lot of responsibility and done the work then when I was, releasing a lot of grief and sadness. And she ended up suggesting a specific meditation and visualization for me. And she was like, I want you to go back to that Jenna that's at 22, and I want you to go be with her. And when you go be with her, I want you to give her a hug. And I want it to almost be as if it becomes this thing where you are receiving the hug, but you're also giving it at the same time. And whatever it is that you would tell yourself at 22, as like a coach, as a sister, as a confidant, please tell her what you think, and tell her that she's loved, because clearly there was a time when she really wasn't feeling that much love for herself. And I went there. I had done all that. I was using the egg, particularly when we were doing a lot of light frequencies and the meditation and really cleansing the areas and looking at my ways of how was this decision impacting my life, and how is it impacting my life today. So I was able to, at the very end of these meditations, I did about 5 of them, where I met my 22-year-old self. And through the journaling and using the Yoni egg, I also started to visualize, okay, if I were to rewrite the story, what would it look like? And like, how would I have wanted it to end? So through that series of sessions and sets that I had, I started to rewrite the story. So I rewrote it in a way that is a lot more um, just a lot more healing, a lot more self-accepting, because my worth really wasn't the best at that time, and I was making a lot of mistakes in my life, clearly. And to look back and to say, okay, this is how you're going to want this to end. I think that we have the power in our body and in our mind and consciousness to rewrite stories, right? So like, there's different timelines and the ways that things can unfold. And I created a whole new timeline for that experience. And so from the weeping, from the accountability, from the journaling and everything that I did, like now when I think about the experience, I look back and it's been rewritten. Like it's not the
Amazing.
same
That's
experience that
fantastic.
it
Well
was.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for everything. Are there any parting words you'd like to make as we wrap up?
Do the work. I mean, I just had an orgasm right before this class. Like I love it. I am so free. I am so happy. I've healed all types of, my relationship with my vagina, my relationship with myself, my relationship with my menstruation, and my relationship with my body altogether. So if there's like anyone who has any experiences that seem minute and not big enough to not allow you, or that will stop you from doing the work, I really highly recommend it. I mean, I see my life completely growing and expanding in the way that it is, and to even more so. So I'm so grateful for the amount of time and effort and work that you put into this, Kim. It was absolutely incredible. One of the most beautiful experiences. And I'm still using every tool. Like I'm still in the program, and it's a life practice, and I will never stop. I love it.
Amazing. That's great to hear. Thank you, Jenna.
Thank you so much.
My legendary Vaginal Kung Fu Salon opens for registration next week. This is your step-by-step guide to learn to harness all of the creative, orgasmic, and healing potential of your vagina. All of the practices Jenna talks about for cultivating her feminine energy and awakening her vagina to be the ultimate truth teller and divining rod are what we do in Vaginal Kung Fu. From the jade egg vaginal workouts to the breast massage routines, self-pleasuring practices, and vaginal reconnaissance, it's all here. Plus, all of my quantum techniques for you to clear blockages, dive into sexual shadow work, reset your nervous system from the deepest possible level, and clear the channels so your vagina can function as your ultimate GPS in your life. And of course, orgasm giver. All this and more in Vaginal Kung Fu. To check out my free video series, Magnetize Men, Money, and Miracles with Your Vagina, and be notified of when we open the doors for registration, go to kimanami.com, look for Sexual Savant Salons, and click on Vaginal Kung Fu. And you too can have a super magnetic, gushing, lubricating, ejaculating, self-healing, creative genius producing vagina. Thank you so much for listening. Subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and send somebody else the gift of a multi-orgasmic and transformational love life by sharing this episode with them. If you'd like to go deeper into all things orgasms, sign up for my free Orgasmopedia series where you'll learn about 9 different types of orgasms everyone can have. Go to kimanami.com and you'll see the sign up there. Come one, come all.